Hello and welcome to Insight Germany. My guest today is originally from the Philippines, but has been living here in Germany since the year 2000. Father Simon Boiser is a Roman Catholic priest who's a chaplain to the Filipino community in Hamburg and the north of Germany. Welcome to the show. And recently, actually, you were chaplain here in Berlin, weren't you? Yeah. Yes. You're actually a missionary, a member of a particular part of the church called the Divine Word Missionaries. Can you explain to us what that is, first of all?
This is a congregation in the Catholic Church which are composed of missionaries present in the whole world. We are present in more than 60 countries in the world, and also in my country. And we are working in my country, in the Philippines, in universities and schools, in parishes, working with the poor, helping them in their lives.
And there's a big German connection, I believe, to the Divine Word Missionaries.
Yes, the founder of the congregation was a German, Arnold Janssen, and he founded this congregation during the Kulturkampf, and that's why he has to go to the border of Germany in order to establish the Missionshaus, the first house of the missionaries.
What was I don't know about that, the Kulturkampf. What was that about then?
That was a time when there was a kind of animosity towards churches in Germany. It was not easy to found a congregation, a house for missionaries here in Europe.
And when was that?
That was in the 1970s, 1980.
Oh, really? It's recently?
No. It's 1870s.
100 years.
Yeah.
That's okay. It's okay. In the 1870s?
Yeah, that was at the end of the 19th century. And the Germans also wanted to go out together with other Europeans and establish mission houses in the so-called mission areas in other parts of the world.
Okay. And you take a number of vows, including, you've told me, one of poverty. So do you actually yourself have no possessions that you can call your own?
So I have my computer, my cell phone. It's part of my work, yes. Yeah. But we share many things together. So we have, for example, a common car, which we are sharing together with my conference where I live. And we share things so that we could do our pastoral work more efficiently. So there's somebody who's in charge of the finances, there's somebody who's in charge of other things. So I could concentrate on my work, doing my missionary work as a pastor for the Filipinos.
Yeah, I wondered about that. With that, I wondered if it was a kind of relief, almost, not to have to worry about these things.
It's a kind of you delegate some work about money to other people, and then I could, concentrate on my work. I feel also some people have needs, for example, and that's why. But that's not a problem in my congregation. If you want to buy a new pair of shoes, you could just ask your superior, and then he will give you appropriately.
Yeah. Now you're a missionary priest, and we've mentioned this word missionary a number of times. One who is sent on a mission is what that means, to convert people to Christianity. Now, it could be considered slightly controversial in today's society. Has your job changed in recent years as a missionary?
The word missionary has many negative connotations. Yeah. Here in Germany, if you hear the word missionary, it is as if you are somebody from a sect trying to force people to be converted and to be baptized. But in my congregation, we see mission as our work in the church, trying to engage in dialogue with other religions, with other people who are especially poor or at the margins of society. So we think that the missionary is the basic vocation of every Christian, trying to go out into the world and spread the good news.
Yeah. And you were here in Berlin, as I mentioned, as a chaplain to the Filipino community, and now in Hamburg. Why does the Filipino community need its own priest?
This is a situation of many migrants coming to Germany, for example, that they miss their home religion And it's not easy for them to adjust to the church here because of some language problems. So it's a kind of a being in an embassy, religious embassy, that you are here and I meet people from my country and we speak the same language. So it will help them facilitate their integration to the German society.
Well, yeah, that's the point. Does it actually help them integrate? Or if you have, it can be Filipino, it can be American, it can be English, it can be whatever. There's an English church in Berlin, there's an American church in Berlin. But if they come into the community here and they go to the church and stay in that community, perhaps it doesn't help integration, is the argument, anyway.
Yes. When I was here in Berlin, we had, in our church, there were the German community and the Filipino community. And we did many things together. So it was a kind of a place of encounter. So we also celebrated Mass in German. When there was a common project, we did it together. So it was a place where you could not just hide in your own four walls, but also meet Germans. So the integration is beyond the language thing, but meeting real people.
Yeah, sure. Now, recently, my guest's home country, the Philippines, was headline news all over the world for, sadly, the wrong reasons. The most devastating typhoon hit the islands last November.
Typhoon Haiyan was the worst natural disaster ever to hit the Philippines. There were over 6,000 fatalities, and more than 4 million people were forced out of their homes. And this despite large-scale preventive safety measures before the storm hit. Philippine authorities moved some 800,000 people to sturdy evacuation centers, schools, churches, and public buildings. But they were no match for the extreme winds of Super Typhoon Haiyan, or Yolanda, as it was being called locally. Getting aid to the survivors was a massive logistical challenge for the poor Southeast Asian archipelago nation of over 7,000 islands. Roads, transportation, and communications were devastated by the storm.
Now, although the Philippines is used to storms, that must have been a terrible shock for you.
That was a shock. People are saying every year we are visited an average of 20 storms per year, or more than 10 storms. But this Yolanda storm was really very, very strong.
How do you think, looking back now, the Philippine government handled the crisis? Do you think it handled it well at the time?
I believe they handled it to the best of their capacities.
Yeah?
But people, they demand more from them. They were receiving lots of aid from the international community. They were expecting that there will be faster action. But I think the government was also quite challenged by the immensity of the logistics involved.
But I mean, there were warnings, weren't there, of this was going to happen?
Yes, they did something. They went to these places where the typhoon swept, and they were telling people to evacuate. But some people did not evacuate. They were trying to minimize the extent of this typhoon. They were saying we're used to have this typhoon every year, but they were overestimated the magnitude of the typhoon.
Yeah, I mean, sure, it was the most extraordinary. It was the worst ever, I think, to hit the Philippines. Do you think enough was done by the international community in this case? I mean, there's this argument, there's the moral argument about climate change, that the industrial nations are responsible for climate change, so perhaps they should have done more, or do you think they did enough?
We are quite happy that the international community was helping us in this difficult time. That was really unexpected, the sign of solidarity, financial help and material support coming in our country. We are thankful for this, and I think it's not for us to judge whether it's enough or not.
Okay, fair enough. At the time disaster struck, you were here in Berlin. Let's have a look back at how the Filipino community here responded and reacted to the news.
This Catholic church is at the heart of the Philippine community in Berlin. In the wake of the storm, the church has become a drop-in center for news and coordinating relief efforts. The events 10,000 kilometers away are on everyone's minds. Members of the community bring whatever they can in donations. They come to pray for their family and friends, to talk and offer each other comfort and support. They're desperate to find out as much as possible about what's going on in the Philippines. Father Simon Boiser is doing his best to get first-hand information.
I got in touch with some people I know in Manila. They're traveling to Tacloban on Saturday. I told them to let me know what the situation is like there and what is needed.
Clothing, food, and medicine are all urgently required in the Philippines. Members of the community fill 15 boxes on this day alone. They want to send them straight away. Some will be taken by the Red Cross, the rest by people traveling to the Philippines, visitors and business people, anyone who's willing to assist. They hope that their contribution will make a difference and help people to get through the catastrophe.
We Filipinos are very spiritual. Faith is not a theological matter that we discuss, it's a way of life. We believe God will help even if it's very difficult. We're grateful for the help we're getting.
This is just one of many Philippine expat communities around the world doing what it can to alleviate the desperate situation back home.
My guest is Father Simon Boiser, who we saw there in that report. You say there about the Filipinos being very spiritual. I did read about it that many of them thought nothing of climate change. They thought it was divine retribution. Do you think it was divine retribution?
No, personally not.
No.
No.
But what do you think about that attitude? Is that
I think it's part of the Filipino spirituality that we tend to see what is happening in our lives in terms of God's will. When something happens to me, something fortunate, I would attribute it to God. Say, thank you, God, for this gift, for this grace. Something bad is happening to me, maybe I will start thinking, maybe I have done something wrong, which I deserve to be punished in some sense. But this is not a punishment, a kind of a penance, but this is more of a sense, a signal for you to change your life, to make it better.
And do the Filipinos you know here in Berlin and in Hamburg and in Germany, do they have that attitude too, or is it slightly changed by living in a different society?
It's really quite difficult to compartmentalize and to judge. Yes,
okay.
Yeah. But people, they're also influenced by the German mentality. It's a practical mentality. It's a proactive mentality, trying to be the hands of God, meaning helping people and doing things concretely and not only praying.
You come from, Philippines is made up of, what is it? It's almost 7,000 islands, isn't it? I think. And you're from one of the bigger ones, Cebu. What was Cebu Island, which we got a map of? What was the destruction like there?
In the northern part of my island, they were affected by the typhoon. I've heard more than 90% of the houses were destroyed. And 1 month before the typhoon, it was also affected by a strong earthquake.
Oh, my goodness. Yes. And is Cebu Island getting back on its feet?
They're receiving a lot of help nowadays from the international community, from NGOs, and people are helping one another, helping the government, and trying to assist those who are victims of lost their houses. I've heard that they are distributing now food and medicines, and they're also helping those people who have lost their houses to build them. So they are giving construction materials.
And these are arriving in the Philippines right now.
Yes.
And it is going on. Good. It's nice to hear. Now, let's go back a little bit. We ask our guests to send personal photographs, and this is you.
Oh.
Very cute one of my guests here. And I just wondered, what is that a cake? What's that?
I think that's a birthday cake.
That's a birthday cake. Do you know what birthday it was?
I don't know if it was my birthday or the birthday of my classmate that was taken in the kindergarten.
Oh, I see. It wasn't necessarily your birthday that was taken in. You're too young to remember.
Yes.
Fair enough, fair enough. The machine is... Technology. Now, I wanted to show one of your parents, because you spoke about your parents here. This is more recent.
Yes.
It was on their visit to Germany.
To Germany. They were here when I was ordained a priest in 2005. That was taken in the chapel near the tomb of our founder of my congregation in Stijl in Netherlands.
I must ask you why you were, as a young man, after you finished school, you were in a seminary in the Philippines. Then why did you come to Germany?
That was an option in the seminary at that time. I was planning to go to China because that was the priority of what my superiors are telling us. But a friend priest of mine have told me that if you want to study serious theology, then you have to go to Germany.
Why is that?
The German theologians are quite popular in the Philippines. The name like Ratzinger or Hans Küng, he is also living here in Germany. The Germans are known to be philosophers and theologians. So if you go to Germany, you have this chance of, reading these theologians and philosophers in their original language.
Oh, okay. It must have been, though, apart from that side of things, it must have been quite a culture shock to come here. And you didn't speak a word of German?
No, it was really difficult. The German language is difficult, but if you take time to practice and take time to talk with people, then you could learn the language, I think.
Yeah. But then that was in Bonn, I believe. Then you moved down to Bavaria, which is sort of deep in the country. That must have been yet another culture shock. Did you understand the Bavarians? I should tell our audience, they have a strong accent.
They have a very strong accent.
Yes.
But they are very Catholic, so I had a fun time there in Bavaria with people, joining them in their pilgrimages and enjoying nature. Yeah,
and this is, technology again. I did have the right phone. This goes rather well with this. This is enjoying the nature in Bavaria, I believe. So what's going on here? I mean, it's pretty obvious you're holding a lamb, but...
This picture was taken when I celebrated my first Mass in Landsberg, and I was surprised that the parishioners organized a kind of a feast for me, and then they had this small fence where there were lots of lambs there, and then I took one of the lambs, and they say that's a very beautiful picture of a good shepherd.
Yeah. And, I mean, Bavaria is very Catholic, part of Germany. The Philippines is also a very Catholic country, but it is a very different kind of Catholicism, isn't it?
They say that more than 90% of the Filipinos are Catholics, and our Catholicism has to do with our lifestyle, with our mentality, how we relate to nature. Here in Germany, it's a different kind of Catholicism, where you could discuss theology, you could discuss issues in society. It's quite interesting.
Do you think it's a more sort of intellectual Catholicism here, then?
I think, yes.
But maybe not in Landsberg, in the country there. I don't know. I mean, was the community very close, just like it might be in the Philippines? I don't know.
I experienced the community as very, very active, very, very close. I was together with the youth. I was assigned with the altar servers. We were having plenty of... We were going out and eating together and, enjoying singing songs. And I had a very nice time there.
And you were accepted from the word go there?
Yes, even though I believe I was the only foreigner there, but they accepted me as I am, as I was, yes.
Now, I know you're also in Baden-Württemberg. We're going around the country with you. You've been to many places. And you had to learn to ride a horse. Now, that doesn't seem as one of the conditions of being a Catholic priest. So what was that about?
That was this very interesting tradition near Weingarten, Blutried, wherein once in a year there are more than 2,000 horses going around the city. And And this is a very long tradition, I think more than 800, 700 years.
Yeah.
And at that time, there was a parish priest who was sick, and they were looking for a priest who could substitute for him. Mm-hmm. So they called me and asked me if I could ride a horse. And I told them that my only experience is only riding a carabao in the Philippines. But I said, okay, well,
riding
a buffalo.
A buffalo? A buffalo?
A water buffalo, yeah.
A caribou, sorry, a buffalo. You've ridden a buffalo in the Philippines, and okay, yeah. Go on.
Yes, and then they, for 2 weeks, they had a kind of a training in riding a horse, and I did that, and then it was interesting because the horse did that for almost 11 years already, so he knows his way through the city. Yeah. But it was a very interesting experience, riding a horse from 6 o'clock in the morning until 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Really?
And praying during the whole time.
Now, you were in Bavaria in 2005, and a new pope was elected, and it was quite a surprise at the time because it was a German cardinal who became Pope Benedict. Tell us about hearing of him being elected Pope. I think it was a surprise to us all, but you were in Bavaria, I should explain, is where he comes from. So what was that like?
So during the election, we had, when the results were announced from the conclave, we were supposed to have a kind of a meeting in the parish council, and my parish priest told us we have to cancel this meeting because there's a news that we have a new pope. So we were sitting in front of television, and it was announced that it was Joseph Ratzinger. And I was happy because it was a German. And I know that, German, the Ratzinger was quite known for his plenty of books, for his solid theology. So I was very happy of the result. But I was also surprised that some of the members of the parish council was quite modest in their reaction. They say, okay, maybe let's see what will happen.
That amazes me. Why do you think that was?
Maybe I don't think it's typical of German just to explode and they are quite modest in their reactions and quite careful, especially with the reputation of Benedict or Ratzinger being a very conservative cardinal.
Yeah, really?
Yes.
Really? We'll talk about that more. My guest mentioned in our questionnaire, actually, that his favourite living German is the Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI. Let's have a look back at his papacy, which, as we all know, ended quite suddenly when he decided to retire in February last year. And he's the favourite living German of Father Simon Boiser, who's a chaplain to the Filipino community in Hamburg and in the north of Germany, who's my guest. We heard what you thought about his appointment and the interesting reaction, you say, from people locally in Bavaria. What did you actually think about his resignation? Did you think it was a bold step, or were you sad?
People were talking about the status of his health before his resignation. So I think it was logical that it will come some way or another. But this decision was really quite very courageous from his side. I think it is the first pope since more than 400 years who resigned.
I think it's even longer.
Yes.
Is it 400?
Yes.
Who am I to correct you? But
yes.
Many centuries anyway, yes.
And I think it was also a sign of humility from his side as a pope, not to think that he could do everything and that he would carry on his office as a pope until he dies. But thinking about the welfare of the church, he says, it is time for me to go.
He was considered conservative, although he obviously embraced modern media, as we saw there, and the new pope is considered more liberal. Do you think this is the way forward for the church, to have a more liberal pope?
The pope, the personalities of the pope depends on where they come from. And the new pope, the Pope Francis, comes from Argentina, and the South Americans are known for their different personalities. They are quite lively. And Pope Benedict, being a German and being a professor, he is known for his soft-spoken, very modest way of saying things. But I think for us, it is a sign that the Catholic Church has become more international.
I want to talk about ecumenism, because in our questionnaire, you say that's the best thing about living in Germany. First of all, we should explain what ecumenism is.
I think that's the Catholic and the Protestant Church are working together, going beyond their differences and sharing what is common among them, and trying to overcome the ideological fightings of the 16th century. And what I experienced here is quite positive. When I was in the South, I was able to work with Protestant chaplains in hospitals, in old people's homes, and we were, talking with one another, and we were not debating about the church teachings or the dogmas, but we're trying to work together, helping people who are in need.
It's the coming together of the different types of Christian faiths. Yeah?
Yes.
And you mentioned there in the south, which is very Roman Catholic. You're now in Hamburg, in the north. How is it there? How is ecumenism or ecumenical works working in the north of Germany?
I'm still quite new in Hamburg, and I'm working for the Filipinos there. I have no experience with the other churches, but when I was blessing a ship in Hamburg, I was accompanied by a woman deacon who was from the Protestant church. And when we blessed the church, the ship, she was also making the sign of the cross. I was surprised because I thought that only Catholics are making the sign of the cross. And she did that in front of the Filipinos in order not to, to disturb them. And I think that was a sign of this willingness to go beyond the cliches or the stereotypes of what is Catholic and what is Protestant.
What do you think about women priests, actually, if I may ask you that? Isn't it time for women priests?
That's a very controversial topic. I believe that God is open to all of us. He does not discriminate. But it is not easy for the Catholic Church just to, adopt certain practices. It has been existing for more than, thousands of years. And then I think it's one of the biggest challenges of the Catholic Church in our time today. Yeah.
But do you think are you allowed to give your own opinion about?
Yes, we are allowed to say
women
our private.
Priests. Do you think it would be a good thing for the Catholic Church? Do you think long term, it's going to take time, as you say, but do you think it's something that will come?
I really could not predict what will happen in the future, but I think many things will change because, I'm working in my communities, the majority of the active members are women. So, and I'm happy that there are women working in my community. Even the altar servers are girls and women. So for me, it's not a question of, who is going to get this position or not. But it has become quite complicated if you go to the hierarchy and then the teachings in Rome and everything. But hopefully in the future, I hope something will change.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Yeah. We come to the questionnaire, which I know you took your time answering. You said it took you a long time to write things down. We've mentioned Pope Benedict. I should mention just that your favourite German in history is Martin Luther. And I was about to say he wasn't a Catholic, but I suppose he was before he started Protestantism.
He was a monk. He was an Augustinian monk. Yeah. And because of his love for the church, he really studied the Bible and translated the Bible and made the Bible available to common people. I think his great contribution was he was able to change the religious and cultural history in Europe. And his concern of the role of Christ in our lives, this Christ-centeredness in our lives, was very important for him. Where do I stand before God? And I think this is one of the central themes in our time today.
Perhaps because of history there, ecumenism, as you say, works so well here. Perhaps that's a reason why, indeed, because Martin Luther comes from Germany, you know, maybe.
Yes.
Don't know. And the last pope was German. Now, other things, another thing that interested me was ingenious German invention. You put down the bicycle, and I thought, I think the French and the Scots would be very upset at that. But I did my research, and I want to show you this picture. This is not from you, but this is the Laufmaschine, or the dandy horse, it's known in English. It's invented in 1817 by Baron von Drais in Mannheim, and it actually was the precursor of the bike, yeah. Is that what you were thinking of at the time, or did you actually...
I've heard that the Germans invented the bicycle, but the idea was not accepted during that time. That's why the inventor went to France and had the bicycle patented there.
Yeah, yeah. Ah, well, we learn something every week on this show. Just one more thing I want to know. The worst thing about living in Germany, no siesta.
People are talking about this so-called the schlaflose Gesellschaft, no? A sleepless society. People are always working 24 hours a day. But I think we need time to take a rest in order to, you know, restore our energies.
Okay. Oh, wonderful. And I know the great culinary achievement was the Maultaschen. Now, let's have a look at the humble Maultaschen, which has its equivalent in a number of culinary styles. The obvious one that comes to mind is Italian ravioli, which you most probably know. The interesting thing about Maultaschen is that it has a religious connection. I don't know whether the father knows, but...
In the southern German region of Swabia, Maultaschen are a staple of local cuisine. The first official mention of the dish dates back to the 18th century. Legend has it that a Cistercian monk at the 12th century Maulbronn monastery invented the recipe. During Lent, he smuggled forbidden beef into the kitchen. He chopped it up with vegetables and concealed the mixture in pockets of pasta dough. To this day, visitors can tour the monk's dining room where the first Maultaschen were served.
Nobody noticed that the meat was stuffed between the layers of dough. Here they say the Maultaschen was invented to pull a fast one on God.
Back in Stuttgart, Chef Frieder Wallenmeier makes Maultaschen as simply as possible. For the filling, for 400 of them, he mixes 12 kilograms of meat with leeks, parsley, and white bread. 22 eggs are added to the mix. Spinach, fried onions, and parsley, along with salt, pepper, and nutmeg, give Maultaschen their unique flavor.
Housewives make them in small amounts. I like to make them in a huge batch, really authentic.
Flour, a pinch of salt, and more eggs are the simple ingredients for the dough. It's rolled out, filled with the meat mixture, and then folded over. Once that's done, Frieder Wallenmeier cuts it into squares. 30 years ago, the chef was even the world champion. He's made it into the Guinness Book of Records 7 times as the world's fastest Maultaschen maker. But Frieder can't come close to industrial production. Bürger, Germany's biggest producer of ready-made Maultaschen, makes 2 million a day. 14 tons alone go to Japan each year. Different forms of the dish can be found around the world. In Russia, they're known as pierogi and vareniki. In Italy, they're called ravioli. Swabia's Maultaschen aren't as well known abroad. The name Maultaschen is a compound word. The first part comes from Maulesel, or mules, used to build the Maulbronner monastery. And the meat mix is stuffed into taschen, or pockets of dough. Maultaschen. It's no coincidence that Maultaschen were invented in Swabia.
Swabians are known for being thrifty. You could say the Maultaschen are a way to use leftovers, but that would be wrong. As they say, if you don't use quality ingredients, you don't get a quality product.
Swabian ingenuity and the right ingredients. A recipe for success for Maultaschen.
And I have to agree with you. I think they're really nice as well. It's a hidden secret of German cuisine, yeah. Did you actually know the story of Maultaschen, that there was a religious connection? Or was it purely...
No, when I was in Baden-Württemberg, people were telling me this anecdote about the...
Oh, okay.
About this peltry with hidden meat inside, and it will be eaten during the Lenten season.
Oh, I see. Okay. Now, we've just got a couple of minutes left, and I'd like to know a bit more about your thoughts on this country. You've lived, if I may say, a very contemplative life. You're a thinker. You're a very thoughtful person, as far as I can see. So it's rather a big question. But how do you think Germany is doing in the great scheme of things? How's this country? You've lived in the south, you've lived in the north, you've lived in Berlin, you've lived all over the country, you've been here 14 years. I wonder what your thoughts are. How do you think Germany's doing?
I think Germany has a special place in world history. We have noticed that here in Berlin, the history is part of the yesterday's news. And what is happening in the world is connected with Germany. Not only because there are lots of philosophers and poets coming here, or lots of scientists also here. I think Germany has a major role, not only in Europe, but in the whole world, not only in terms of economic, but cultural things, literature or philosophy.
Mm. And do you find it a tolerant country?
Of course.
And a multicultural country?
In Germany, tolerance is not only a virtue, but a duty. And I think tolerance here is quite I think the Germans are also thinking, am I tolerant enough? Am I going beyond my borders? I sense that. And I think there are people who are very sensible to these issues.
And you mentioned earlier, when we were talking about the election of the Pope, or the news, that they were very modest. Should they get rid of a little of their modesty? If you see what I mean. I kind of agree with you. You know, they don't know how good they are.
Yes. They have plenty of achievements. They have the best cars in the world. They have the best football clubs in the world. Yeah. Oh, that's
touched a raw nerve there. But the national team, I'll give you, I'm afraid.
They produce the best products, and they still remain quite humble and quite modest, despite their achievements. Despite what's happening in their economy, what they've achieved to all these years after the war, after the Cold War. It's very interesting.
Perhaps we shouldn't tell them. To come back right to the beginning, I mentioned you took the vows of poverty, which we've talked about. You almost have no possessions. You have a computer there. Yeah. So I wonder, where is home for you? Do you have a home? Is Germany your home now? Do you feel you've put your roots down here?
Yes, in these 13 years here in Germany, I feel I've undergone a second childhood or something, by learning the language, by learning life again, seeing it in different glasses. For me, it's a kind of a chosen home, especially in my religion, in my theology, and how I see things. Yes.
Okay. Father Simon Boiser, it's been fascinating talking to you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us on Inside Germany. Thank you for watching. Don't forget, if you would like to get in touch with us and write to us about anything on the show, it's insight@dw.de. That's it for this week. Join me again at the same time next week. Have another fascinating guest on Inside Germany. Bye-bye.